My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
All right, guys, welcome to Property Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Kaminsky, filling in for Dave Dubois. And have you ever wondered how to turn real estate investments into long-term success? Today, my guest, Clayton Smith from Edmonton, has cracked the code with his unconventional journey from flips to buy and hold properties. Clayton, welcome to the show. Excited to dive into your strategies for sustainable real estate growth. Great to have you here.
All right, great to be here. Thanks, Bryce.
So give us a brief overview of your journey into real estate so far.
Well, do you have a couch that I could lay down on?
This isn't a therapy session. Sometimes it can feel like that in real estate.
It can feel like that sometimes.
How did you get started? What was the thing that sparked the interest?
You know, I started taking courses and seminars when I was 16. And I think I've always had an interest in investing in general, probably going back to even when I was a kid. I mean, I sold stock in my lemonade stand when I was about 12 and had a little bit of a popcorn business at school until the school shut me down because I was competition for the lunch stand. So
yeah, yeah, to go sell at the sidewalk, right?
That's right.
Can't do that on property. So there you are out at the sidewalk. I'm not on your property.
That's right. So I learned to deal with a little bit of bureaucracy there early on. And so another thing that got me interested in real estate, and I can remember back to when I was a little kid, just right down the street from me. I grew up in a small town in Alberta, south of Edmonton, a place called New Norway. And in the early 80s, the village built a block, developed a brand new block of lots. You know, I remember riding my bike by, watching the equipment, building this stuff, and then at the end of the summer they were all finished, and then I got to ride my bike around this brand new sidewalk. So
yeah, that's always the best. The new asphalt in Canada, it's a specialty, that new asphalt.
It's a specialty. So yeah, I got to see some of that, and then over the years, you know, a few houses would pop up there, and so yeah, I guess that probably sparked my interest in real estate. So when after a little while, I did, I kind of dabbled with becoming a real estate agent. So I was a real estate agent when I was 19, and learned some valuable lessons from that, and then decided, oh, okay, well, it's time to go back to school. And thought that
it's a hard business, you know. If you don't get the traction, or if it's a bad year in the market, you might have been a great real estate agent, but if it's a bad market year and you're new, that crushes a lot of people.
Yeah, I probably had 3 strikes in that, you know, now that you mentioned that. So I probably was not a great salesperson back then. It was kind of a slow market in the mid 90s in Alberta generally.
Yeah.
And so it was so it was just kind of like I said, some good lessons, and then it was time to move on. So I took civil engineering because the background there, it really, you know, you get exposed to a lot of things that are involved in land development. So I had finished up that program, and then the same year I finished up the program, so got a diploma, got married, and then bought my first rental property in 1999. And
nice.
That was a little controversial between my wife and I, because my wife was kind of thinking, "What? This is crazy. Why are we buying a rental property? We're just renting a 1-bedroom apartment and all this stuff." So I said, "Well, this is all part of the program. You know, just wanted to."
We don't need the house yet, dear. We don't need it yet.
Didn't need it, and couldn't afford to move into it. Actually, we could only afford to really rent it out, and it's what I wanted to do. You know, crunch the numbers and thought that, okay, well, we'll just buy this rental property, and that'll be the start of things. And the long-term plan was to buy it, keep it for 25 years, let somebody else pay the mortgage off. That was the initial plan.
Yeah.
Some valuable lessons, of course, came from that rental property, and some people that have been there will know where this story is going. So I thought it would be pretty cool to tie up this property, and I put conditions in there saying that, I have the right to show it, 24 hours notice, and all that sort of stuff. So I actually ended up getting a tenant in there before I took possession of the property. and also while I bought this property still while I was going to school, and to come up with the down payment for it, I used a student line of credit for it. So
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
yeah, back then you could assume a mortgage and without qualifying. So that was
Creative financing.
pretty good. Creative financing right there.
Yeah.
And so bought that property, got some valuable lessons from my first tenant. And with that ended up going, well, I think that ended up going to, I actually took him to the Court of Queen's Bench.
Yeah,
because
you got the standard, the number. Yeah, I'll take the number one combo, please. Tenant
yeah, that's right.
who
Pretty much.
who looks good on paper and eventually will learn to regret that because I maybe rushed in or so. What do you think attributed to the tenancy issue in the beginning?
I rushed in, definitely rushed in, and it was, it was kind of an ego check because I thought, oh, it'd be cool to be able to say how, oh, I got this rental property, got a renter in before I took possession and all that sort of stuff. So, so yeah, definitely rushed on the selection process. Back then too, your screening process, I mean, you didn't have the kind of screening tools that
Nothing,
you have now.
nothing really. Call
So
their job references.
yeah.
Um, I don't even know what. Show me your pay stub. Like,
Back then, yeah, the pay stub, although on this one, if I remember right, had the person had been downsized, because of course downsizing was a thing in the late 90s, but had a substantial package that he got from the downsizing. Now, in fairness to my first tenant, there was a combination of circumstances that happened too. His wife had cancer and then unfortunately died. So this is a few months into it, and then got to the point where it's like, we got to pay the mortgage on
now.
this.
Yeah.
My wife at the time was working at Dairy Queen while I was going to school, so I wasn't making any money. She was making, Dairy Queen money.
That Dairy Queen money is not going to pay the mortgage.
No.
Maybe in the 90s you could get close, but not anymore.
Yeah, it might have been a little tight then, but we also had our own rent to pay where we were living, so it was tight. So I was basically paying our expenses by pulling out of the line of credit, and to get us through. And but what kept us going through that time was the knowledge that real estate generally goes up over time. Time is on our side. We have the property. There's equity in it, so eventually we're going to win.
Yeah.
And so the way that turned out is that we had to go through the eviction process, went before master and chambers at the time, and got the court order. And as it turned out, when I was leaving the courthouse, the tenant and I actually ended up on the elevator going down together. So
awkward elevator
a little bit awkward, but it actually turned out fairly well because I just kind of approached it from the fact that I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and sometimes I maybe too much, but in this case I acknowledge that, hey, he had a rough, some rough circumstances that happened. I just kind of explained that our back was against the wall too, and I just told him that, hey, you know what, I'll tell you what, I've got a new young couple coming to move in. Why don't you leave the place in good condition in 2 weeks, like the judge said, and I'm not going to chase after you for any of the back rent, any of the owing, or any of the rest of the judgment. We just part ways
and just let it go.
Let it go. And 2 weeks later, before the new people moved in, the place was clean. There was like a bag of recycling left in the porch, and that was it. The place was ready to move into. So
that's good.
Had some folks in there for 5 years. We ended up selling the place, made about $50,000 on it, and went from there. So it was a good initiation, anyways.
So you've been involved in various real estate investment strategies like buy and hold, flips, spec home construction. How do you decide which strategy to pursue for your opportunity?
Well, that's in some of what I've done, it's kind of the opportunity at the time. And because for me, most of the time, real estate was kind of a side gig. I always had kind of a safe, secure job. I was working as a survey technologist, and was, when we're busy, they're fairly long days there. And while I tried to I've done the thing too where I bought a house, moved into it, and the intention was to fix it up while living there and then sell it off. Well, when you're working at the same time, that becomes a bit challenging,
You don't have much
especially if you're
gas
working
left
some
in
long
the
hours.
tank after work. Yeah.
That, and then you had a brand new child into the mix, and the it has a way of applying the
Now
brakes a
you're
little bit
now
to the
you're at
project.
negative energy. You're in like the negative 20%. You got nothing left and you're stealing from tomorrow today.
That's right. So
So yeah, how do you decide, let's say, because you've been in real estate for a while now. What is it that your primary focus is these days?
I think where I want to go, I still have some rental property. I've been kind of,
Yeah.
selling some of those off over the years. So I've got some rental property still. Uh, and where I have always wanted to get into was land development. And I think
Mm.
that goes back to the story that I told you about
Yeah,
from
putting
being
in the
a
new
kid.
driveways. Yeah.
Yeah, just seeing the new development pop up. So that's where I think that I'm heading. It's always been an interest, and I just love the concept. And having worked in the industry for a number of years, surveying a number of neighborhoods, and you take a piece of land, you strip it clean,
Yeah.
and then by the end of the summer, you're driving on this brand new asphalt that you helped to build. So it's just a amazing feeling.
Yeah.
And
Doing I guess they call that horizontal development, getting the site ready for the lots.
right, yeah.
So are you going to take it all the way and build the houses too, or are you just interested in doing the like land development, getting the roads and such in there and then letting the thing take care of itself?
The thing that I would actually like to do would be just to find the deals and then take it through the subdivision process with the municipality, and then turn it over to the deeper
Zoning,
pockets from
yeah,
there. Yeah,
yeah,
I
zoning,
think that
okay.
over the years, I like being involved in the process, in the physical process of taking that land to the finished product, and having had the chance to build a house myself,
Hmm.
spec house. It's I enjoy that. I enjoy new construction, but there is something to be said about the amount of time involved for that. To take a piece of land and get that lift.
Yeah.
It's a time efficient process. It's a long process.
When
There
you
is
got to kind of be spotting opportunity.
yes,
I was in the south end of town, um, and they've done massive new build, like new
yeah,
construction, whole developments, whole parts of the city are new there. And you see a field that is up for it's like, oh, 10 acres or something, and there's condos all around it, and it's for sale. And you're just thinking, if you had the foresight, 20 years ago to be the guy who bought that dirt when it was worthless,
mhm,
now you're in it. But now that there's a sign on it, that's kind of where like the real money is in the speculation of where the limits of say Edmonton is going. Because right now, with the ring road, you would assume, okay, most of the development is happening within the interior of the ring road, but that's not the case at all. In
mhm,
Edmonton, it's all the way around. People are using the ring road as like an interior highway, places
I
like
know.
Sherwood Park, where it's blowing up and it's expanding outside the city. Um, so it's like, how do you get ahead of that curve to really
Yeah.
find out what they're going to build next? Like, what's valuable
Well,
and what's 30-year land?
right. And I think that a lot of that land that's on the outskirts of the city, a lot of that gets snapped up by the bigger developers pretty quickly. Where some of the big opportunities are in Edmonton, I think, is with some recent policy changes. Like we've got a new
Mhm.
zoning bylaw here in Edmonton, and that's
The
really opened
infill
up
one.
the
Yeah.
infill opportunities. So you see a lot of people that are starting to look at redeveloping existing properties. So they're targeting lots in older neighborhoods, and in some cases, you can build 8 units
Yeah.
on
And
a lot
buying it
that is
last year didn't make sense because they didn't have
right.
the zoning. So you're like, guy says, oh, I want like 157 for this like beat up 1910 shack, no basement. And you're like, buddy, the thing's not worth 130 on this best day. And now suddenly you could put an eightplex on it and the guy's sitting on maybe a 220 price on his dirt. So it's like,
Yeah, or
things
more. I
can,
mean, they're starting
yeah,
to get wise. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? How do you get ahead of the development opportunity? That's one thing that kind of keeps me out of the whole development game because it's very speculative. You have to
Mhm.
have the, you have to have the capital to sit around on these things and say, yeah, I bought, before it switches to fourplexes everywhere, you spend 5 years buying all these junkers. And then suddenly, oh, you look like a genius. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's hard unless you're like doing insider trading to know what the government's going to do next. But I do like the function of, if the government says that they want this style of thing to do, they're going to support it the most. So if you're an investor,
Mhm.
you should just why swim upstream, swim with the current and
Swim with the current.
see where it goes. So the most of your money there is in flips then, or in the buy and hold side of things.
Right now, it's in buy and holds, and I think that we're going to have a point in time here where the market in Edmonton is, we're on an upswing. We're in an
Yeah,
upswing here
I've
in
heard.
Edmonton,
Yeah.
and so what we're looking at is there could even be strategies from 20 years ago from that last boom that we can start dusting off and revisiting this time around. So not too many people right now are talking about condos, but
Mm.
could we be on the cusp of a time where condos are going to be where there's going to be a big demand for condos? With interest rates being pushed up to where they are now, people are getting pushed down the price ladder.
Well, and
So,
people are having families later and later too,
right,
so they don't need, the story of your one bedroom rent apartment. Sadly, the mortgage and the one bedroom rent in Edmonton might be real close, but
yeah,
um, it kind of is a lifestyle thing that's creating the condo
right,
industry, I think. Because if you look at people getting married at 19, 20, 21 back in the 50s, they weren't building condos. They were definitely not even building apartment blocks. It was just, you need a house, here's a house.
they
You need a
wanted the
house for your
house. Yeah,
family, here's a house for your family. So,
yeah.
um, you mentioned finding the right niche in real estate. How do you navigate that, and how were you able to kind of discover your own? What advice would you have for people that are looking to find theirs?
Well, I think they have to try a few different things to see what they like. Not everybody likes flipping. I really, for myself, I didn't care for the flipping process because, you know, you're dealing with old nasty houses, a lot of crap that you're hauling out and all that. And I,
Yeah,
I was kind of a money partner on some of the flip deals, which was all I really wanted to be in. I didn't want to be in there with ripping up the carpet and
yeah, it's the can of
paint
worms
and all that.
business. You're just opening
Yeah,
cans of worms all day. You're like, let's open this wall. There's a vent in this wall. The carpet, oh, the hardwoods are not recoverable after we rip the
right.
carpet up. The can of
Well, and
worms
the
business.
big one is electrical. One of the houses that I first wanted to renovate. This is the one that we bought, and the intent was to renovate and then sell it. So, uh, I just wanted to put a bathroom fan in one day. So I'm up in the attic, and I hate going into attics, especially
Hmm.
with the old insulation and all that stuff. And so I'm in there, I find the wires, and then I go to cut into the wires, start stripping things off. And as soon as I touch the wiring, the insulation, like that plastic insulation that's on the wires, it just crumbled. And as
Mm.
soon as that happened, I just went, "Oh my God."
With
So,
not the right cable in the weather area, so it just became super brittle. So you had to run new
well, and it
wiring.
was and it was about 50 years old. So it was yeah, we ended up rewiring the whole house. So
Oh wow.
there was, and it was lucky that my wife's cousin was an electrical apprentice that was staying with us for a little bit. So he got to pay for his stay by helping us rewire the house.
So along the lines of like figuring out what you, and that's a big thing that I always say. It's like more
Mhm.
than more than what you love is figuring out what you don't want to do in
Yeah.
business, because two things happen when you figure out you don't want to do flips. You're not ever daydreaming about flips, and you can stay focused in your lane as opposed to being like, oh, look at that shiny. I wonder what it's like to do flips. Well, figure it out, um, and do the research. Maybe even do one if
Yeah.
you're so curious, because you'll find out real quick that that business is like, you're gonna be there sometimes late. You're
Yeah.
going to be there late. You're going to be there earlier, and you're going to get the call that the sewer line collapsed. And, because no one's lived in the house for 3 years and it dried out and it collapsed. And now that you're renovating it and you started running water through it again, problems.
Yep.
So, um, what would you say other than like figuring out what you don't want? What advice would you have for people who are looking to find their lane?
I think, well, I think that's a big part of it is that process of finding out what you don't want to do, because there are a ton of options out there for everybody. And people are hammered. You go onto social media and people are hammered with the right way to invest, and it's the right way for whoever the presenter was, but it might not be the right way for you. So to find
Yeah.
what you want, I think that process is part of it. And I was probably doing that process for a long time. The buy and hold. Uh, they renovate and flip, build a new spec house, and I also had a investment partner in on one of the buy and hold projects that I did, so that's worked out decently well. But it's a person has to have a long term view on things. They also have to have some realistic expectations, and as part of trying that process of finding out what you don't want to do, there's lots of opportunities right now to just partner with some people, and you've got
Yeah.
to get out there. The biggest thing, and we could probably touch on the whole idea of being a lone wolf, which I was, but that process of getting out there and networking with people. So go to all the real estate events that you can go to. There's plenty of free ones that are out there. There's some
And
maybe
online now,
$20, and there's
online
online.
masterminds. Yeah.
Oh, you bet. But I would say don't, like, if a person's interested in getting into this, like, do not pass up on the opportunity to get in on those live meetings.
Oh,
The
yeah.
the Zoom meetings, the virtual meetings, those are one thing, and it's good to get some information, but I find it's a little more passive when you're actually
Yeah.
meeting people and you're shaking hands with people and you start to get to know people over several months and weeks and years of going to these meetings. You start to get to know who's doing some things, and you can go up to them and say, hey, I heard you got this project, would you mind if I just kind of shadow you on this project? Maybe they've got a flip going on, maybe they've got a project where they're building a new eightplex or something like that. Just kind of sit down with them, have some coffee, go visit their project,
Mm.
see what it is, and talk to them, find out what it is that they like, that got them into it. And
Yeah, you
from
can
that,
end up becoming isolated in the as the lone wolf
yeah,
thing. And
you
so
definitely can.
you might become like your own bias and like, oh,
Yes.
every idea you have, Bryce, is great. And then you're like, yeah, Bryce, great idea. Yeah. And you're just like in your office talking to yourself. Like get out there.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I think real estate's a contact sport. And what I mean by that is
Yeah.
that you gotta be on the phone. Like this morning, I probably made, just reaching to the network 5 or 10 phone calls to see like what's going on for no reason other than to be like, what are you up to? And
Sure.
to really spread the energy around. So partnerships seem to have played a crucial role in your real estate ventures so far.
Yeah.
Could you share your approach to forming partnerships and what do you look for when looking for potential partners?
The and live networking specifically. You can't get to know people over a Zoom call. It's kind of limited. You need to be able to build a relationship with people, and that takes some time. So if people are looking at this, even if they're looking at real estate as kind of a side thing, uh, it's important to look at it long term and then build relationships with that in mind.
Mhm.
So you get to the meetings, get to know people, meet up with them for coffee, kind of find out, to get to know a little bit about their philosophy, about them, about why they are investing and what their outlook is,
Mhm.
what's driving them, because that's going to play into how they're going to treat your money or treat the projects that you're going to be involved with, if you're going to be a cash investor or if you're going to be an active partner with them. You've kind of got to know a little bit of who you're working with. So, and that takes time. It's not done overnight, and it's something you have to do actively. Um, a person like me who is predominantly would be introverted, a lone wolf. I've had to consciously make that effort to get out and to meet people.
Mhm.
It's not a natural thing for me. And there's many of us out there that would be introverted and are not the first to make that phone call and are not the first to approach people. But you have to actively push yourself to do it. And at first, maybe it'll seem natural, maybe it won't, but it's something I think a person has to just get over, and to just
I
meet
think
somebody,
it's
just
I think
chat with
it's
them.
interesting too, is there's like this mentality, this mindset that people carry that is like a fear in the air. When
Yeah.
I started to really expand networking, I started remembering, oh, this is not a cold conversation. This is not a cold call. This is a business to business conversation. I'm in business, you're in business. Let's do business. Those are far easier upstairs, like in the mindset of things, than who's this person? I'm cold calling this person. I'm cold talking to this person. Like, that's not how real estate actually is. So, what
Mhm.
sort of strategies and mindsets do you have that kind of helped you push past these limitations of, say, introversion and the lone wolf syndrome that you were dealing with?
Well, I kind of wanted to go back onto something you mentioned, and where you said that a lot of conversations are business to business, and I would
Mm-hmm.
go level deeper, and I'd say actually it's person to person,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether you're never talking to somebody that's in a business, or you're not
Mm-hmm.
talking to somebody that's an investor. You're talking to a person,
Yeah.
and that's, I think that if you bring it down to that, and you just look to just develop a genuine curiosity for where people are at and what people are doing. What brings a person to a meeting. There's a reason why people go to these meetings, and I've been going to them for a number of years, and you kind of start to get to know that there's kind of a common, there is something in common that everybody has when they go to these real estate meetings. I mean, who are these crazy people that are going to meetings on an evening, or maybe they're going to
Like a
to
Tuesday night at a
a
hotel, and
Tuesday
it's just
night
like
at
you
a
got nothing
hotel,
better to do.
or they're
Actually,
or they're
this
going
is
to a
better.
weekend presentation, to
Yeah.
spend their entire weekend with a couple hundred other
Waking
people.
up at 6 in the morning.
Right. And then dressing up like they're going to church or something like that too sometimes. Not
Mm-hmm.
maybe not so much now, but that definitely used to be a thing. And
Yeah. Put your power
and
suit on,
so
red tie.
yeah, and so there was that. So it's just kind of about having a conversation and getting to know people, without necessarily having the intent that, okay, I've got to raise money from this person. And you've got to, uh, some people can, maybe for some people they can do that, but I think that people pick up on that. When
Mm.
you're approaching somebody to try to sell somebody, I don't know about you, but I kind of pick up on
You
that,
get the
and maybe it's just my
vibration.
nature. You get
Yeah.
a vibe off of that, and you're
Yeah.
kind of guarded. And when you're guarded, it's tough to develop a relationship. So I think just having a genuine curiosity about the other person is a huge thing. And maybe you're going to sell something to them, maybe you're not. Maybe you're going to get into a deal with them, maybe not. But you
Well, I
can't be
like
attached to that.
there's like a mentality, sales, especially when it ran through with COVID, it kind of shifted people's trust around buying. And so
Mm.
I think
Trust
what's
in
really,
general. Yeah.
yeah, but specifically amount around how much people were getting pitched, because we were all sitting at home being pitched nonstop,
Right.
because that's how we were being sold at home,
Yeah.
online, or in chat or whatever. And I the advice I always give is, find out if they need what you offer first. Like, find out if they actually are in need of service before you start bringing up service
Sure.
conversation, right? And so many people try to shift the conversation into and around service before saying, hey, um, do you need tires? Do you own a car? No? Then you probably don't want to hear about my business about
Yeah.
tires, do you? So,
Well, and that goes to something too, about, and just as you're mentioning it, it just popped into my mind, about how a lot of people approach, building relationships. And I'm not a salesy guy. I haven't really taken any sales courses or anything like that. It's just stuff that I've kind of learned out of need for over the years.
yeah,
But and I say the word need because that's how a lot of people approach their relationships. It's some they need to make a
transactional.
deal. It's
Yeah.
it's very transactional. And if you can get away from that and just genuinely build the relationship, and that means you have to be genuinely curious about other people, then you can start to warm things up, and you can build a relationship with somebody, just by, a lot of times you find out that you just have things in common. And if you're going to a real estate meeting, generally speaking, you can probably find people that have things in common. You're going to have common philosophies. Generally speaking, people are after a certain level of freedom, financial freedom, especially in their lives. They have a vision of what they want to do, and it doesn't involve going into an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 job every day. They know that they might have to do that at a certain stage of life, but eventually they want to get away from it. They want to do something else with their life and pursue some interests and hobbies and travel and all these wonderful things. So there's common ground that you can build with people when you go to these meetings, and I think that's where things begin.
So with everything you've done in real estate so far, what would you say your unfair advantage is? What comes easy to you that other people might find difficult to do?
I've been able to analyze properties and kind of fit them in with some trends, and I also look at some macro trends as well. That's probably a power. It would be an powers of analysis. There's some technical things that I've also been able to employ, just from having a surveying and engineering background. I can pick up on things pretty easily when it comes to zoning laws, engineering issues, and things like that. When it comes
reading
to
that
properties.
15-page new document,
Sure.
I cannot. That's just not my jam.
Oh
I'm not.
yeah, I've
I'm not
I've
going to
sat
sit
here
through
for
that.
hours scrolling through the documents, looking at the diagrams and trying to fit that to different scenarios. So there's things like that. I mentioned macro trends. I've always been interested because I've always been interested in investing in that, and that's gotten me interested in what the big picture stuff is. And I've had a long time interest in politics, and a lot of that gets interwoven and all that
Yeah.
too. So that
Yeah.
brings interest rates into play, what drives interest rates and things like that, because that all comes into the big picture when it comes to real estate. And you have all these cycles that are at play, and you have multi-year intergenerational cycles, and you have local cycles and things like that.
And that's the
So
thing too, is a
things
lot
like
of
that.
like first time investors don't like people I think inherently know that real estate has a cycle, but it's only when you get caught by the tide do you do the research. Like if you're for a
Right.
first time person out there, you're listening, you're just getting started, there's something called the 7-year real estate cycle. Research it and be aware and try to find out where you are. Like, figure out where you are in the tide, because you don't want to tie your boat to the high tide and come back and then the boat's hanging from the dock. Like figure out where
Right.
you are in that 7-year cyclical cycle, and you'll be a lot better for it, better prepared for the future. So one last
Sure.
question for you.
You bet.
Based on your experience, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice about real estate investing, what would it be?
Buy good properties. Focus on good properties. Some of the properties I bought, and every investor has been through this too. That you buy what you can afford at the time, and so when you're buying what you can afford, if that's at the lower end, you're going to have issues when it comes to getting tenants. You're going to have issues when it comes to maintenance,
Yeah.
and then you're going to wish you'd never bought the property. So, and fortunately, and this comes from knowing cycles. Fortunately, if you're in an upswing, you can get out of the problem and
Yeah.
hopefully make some money. But if you get caught, then
Now
you
you're
could
holding
be a
them for
long-term
5 to 7
investor.
years. Yeah. Now you're a long-term investor.
You're a long-term
Suddenly that
investor.
flip is a buy and hold.
Yep, I know about that a little bit. So
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by. So if people want to connect with you, they want to find out more, what should they do? How do they find you?
sure, they can find me on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is probably the main place to go to, and they can look up Clay Smith on LinkedIn, and they can also get in touch with me on Instagram at clayton.smith.ab.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by. And until next time, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode.
All right, thanks for having me, Bryce. Pleasure.
My name's Dave Dubeau, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.